morning, everyone, and welcome back to another exciting episode of the Garage Gym PT podcast. We hope you guys enjoyed last week's episode, talking a little bit about overhead stability. And today we're going to kind of take one of those segments that we talked about in the upper back strengthening portion, at least. We're going to dive deep into this today. Before we get started here, though, just wanted to say thank you to Alex Bookout for letting me drop in down at Homegrown Strength and Conditioning. Had a great time, enjoyed the atmosphere. So if you guys are ever down in the Cincinnati area and you want a good CrossFit workout, go hit them up.
Yep, especially if you want to get your butt kicked. It's probably like the place in the area to go do it.
I had a lot of fun, I won't lie. A good time. But just to kind of, I guess lead us off here, we talked a little bit about overhead stability in last week's episode. And the very first thing we labeled when we were talking about having a strong overhead was the ability for you to extend and maintain your positioning in the thoracic region. For those of you who don't know what the thoracic region is, think of it as like your upper back.
Yep, basically anywhere from like your low back towards the base of your neck.
Mm-hmm.
Where all of your rib.
Say it again, Dave.
Where all of your rib cage inserts in the surrounding area.
Perfect. But just to kind of preface two different sets of muscles here that are in this area, you have the spinal erectors, which are obviously the function is in the name. They erect the spine. So they maintain that positioning and also will control, forward flexion. But then you also have the scapular girdle muscles, which will obviously, again, the function is in the name. They will help to control the positions of the scap. Just to kind of dull it down, overhead stability, we talked a lot about that last time. So we hope you guys learned a lot from it. But today, what we're specifically going to talk about is how to strengthen the upper back.
Yeah. And guys, there's a ton of carryover here, meaning like somebody who has a good overhead position typically has a very strong upper back. So we're just kind of going down that rabbit hole of specifically like, what does that mean? What does it look like? How do you do it, etc.
Mm-hmm. And not just just single in on overhead stability, but upper back strength also translates into your deadlift, your squat. Like if you're constantly getting folded by that heavier weight, having a stronger upper back leads to bigger numbers.
Yeah, this archetype is somebody who loses stability in a bench press. It's somebody who folds forward in a front squat in particular, and has trouble completing the deadlift at the top. So we've all seen the memes with like the dogs pooping in the yard saying this is like the high schoolers doing squats and deadlifts in the gym. This is the exact person that we're looking at here as far as who has the most benefit of strengthening this region.
I just think of that one video. We're going to do squats. You're going to sit back like you're shitting over a hole.
And you're going to squat.
No, but I guess just to name a few different exercises, and we can go into like reps and sets later, but do you just want to name a few different exercises that maybe you use, Dave, and then I'll name a few as well?
Yeah. So I guess like traditional stuff, like I said, these exercises like that we're talking about too, you can use just basic things such as front squats, deadlifts, bench press holds, bamboo bars. So the actual execution of the exercise can strengthen it, but these are more or less just accessory pieces to add. Sure. So let's kind of go maybe group by group first, and like we'll just kind of hit it that way. So as Blue aforementioned, the spinal erectors, right? So basically they control extension of the spine. So the only way that you're going to hit this is to do thoracic extension. So short list is anything that you're going to do. Sweat shrugs, they can be banded, they can be barbell, they can be dumbbell, but you really want to get an arch in your thoracic spine forward and then execute it into extension. Obviously, when you're considering the extension piece too, Deadlifts do a good job of this. Good mornings do a very good job of this. But anything that's going to be kind of in that hip hinge plane, uh, moved up slightly. So like you're not necessarily hinging through your hips, but you're actually creating a rounding from your back and then reversing it. And you want that to be through your rib cage, almost like where you would run like a foam roll to pop your thoracic spine. This is that motion that you're wanting to accentuate here.
I think one of the big ones you mentioned there, Dave, good mornings. Um, I I never used to program good mornings that often in my training um, until I met Alex Schroeder, and then I started actually using the safety squat bar and doing a bunch of different variations of good mornings, and that has probably been like the gateway to like just much bigger numbers.
Yeah.
It's just nuts. Um,
And you mentioned something there that's really key is bar position. So you have to stick it higher on your back.
mhm.
If you do it in a low bar, you're going to hit your low back.
Correct. Correct. You have to think about where the weight placement needs to be. Um, I mean, just the physics of it all. If you're trying to create a lever, right, or trying to create like a tipping point,
Yeah.
so you put that higher, then you're going to be able to get more rounding,
Yeah.
make them work
You're,
harder.
you're almost trying to put yourself at a mechanical disadvantage by doing it.
Mm-hmm. So if it's too
Meaning,
easy, you're not
yeah,
feeling it there. You maybe need to reassess where that's at.
exactly. So, like, let's even just run through like the anatomy of the paraspinals, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
you have, I don't know, 3-ish sets in my eyes. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
this is debatable based upon like who you read or what you are accustomed to. But you have ones that kind of cross from like your sacrum all the way up into your thoracic spine, kind of blending with the lumbar. Then you kind
Yep.
of have like low lumbar through thoracic and then thoracic kind of through cervical.
Correct.
So that bar position, you need to create a lever that's going to hit the ones from the lumbar to thoracic and above. And the
Mm-hmm.
lower that you do that and do a hip hinge, the more likely you are to get the lumbar or sacrum just from like a leverage standpoint.
Mm-hmm. And then you also got to have like I like having someone have eyes on me while I'm doing these because I know that I get fatigued. I will try to compensate in my lumbar region, and so then they'll yell at me like, "Hey, no, wrong spot," and then I'll start to like if I feel like my lower back's blowing up more than what my upper back is, I know I'm not extending in that right spot as I get under fatigue.
Yeah. And I've even seen some people use a GHD with a safety squat bar. And then
Mm-hmm.
they'll kind of just like basically hinge over the GHD and just round the thoracic spine, then move to extension. So that way it's kind of acting as a check to make sure you're not hip hinging.
Mm-hmm. Got to be spinal movement. You want strong spinal erectors, you need to have spinal movement.
Yep.
Uh,
And if you do it right, the next day you're going to feel like you have to crack your back basically every 2 hours or something. Like, first time I've ever did that, I did like 3 sets of 30. And I was like sitting at my computer the next day and like I had never felt that region engaged. So
Pretty
I was
wicked.
literally was asking people to help crack my back just so I could like actually get some movement in there again.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you ever utilize Jefferson curls for training the upper back, Dave, or no?
Uh, not
I usually don't.
not really.
There's better, more effective ways.
I just it, once again like it is good to have motion, but it's sports specific. So like
Mm-hmm.
when push comes to shove, your spine is supposed to protect your CNS and
Mm-hmm.
your spinal cord there. So is inducing excessive range of motion what you want to do? I think even to get outside of the standard deviation, it's probably not beneficial
Yeah.
because all of the stuff that we're talking about as far as like execution of a lift or moving in space typically doesn't happen in the extreme ranges of motion. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really trying to promote that for anybody because of the thought of, I don't know, excessive movement can create some problems, i.e., the stretching your hamstrings before you run type of deal.
Yeah.
So
Never a good thing.
yeah, there's probably a good standard deviation, and I don't like to get outside of it.
Makes sense. Um, so
Not,
kind of leading away from training like the spinal erectors, then, uh,
yeah,
incorporating the scapular girdle with spinal erector training. Just naming a few things right off the bat, like for example, bent over row.
Yeah.
Absolutely love that one. You could even, would you think?
I think like a big piece here is we're trying to talk about like retraction
Yeah,
with
yeah.
like your
I was going
shoulder
to say how to
blades.
preface that. Retraction
Uh,
of the scaps.
yeah, and there's a lot of ways to address this. I mean, you're kind of talking about maybe two or three pieces that also kind of contribute to this, right? So you have like your
Mm-hmm.
maybe upward rotators, horizontal abductors, and then maybe downward rotators that you're trying to hit to create a stable girdle here, on top of the ability to execute external rotation. But when it's
Mm-hmm.
pure just scapular retraction, you're trying to create it's like a sling inward, I guess, towards your thoracic spine.
Mm-hmm.
And I usually kind of even create like three, maybe four categories, depending on like what I'm trying to achieve. Usually, I don't try to like hit the upper traps too much
Mm-hmm.
for patients, but for people that need them,
Yeah.
and you aren't symptomatic, then it's a great thing to hit. But I'll break it down to like rowing, of some variation, some
Mm-hmm.
version of horizontal abduction. So this would be like a banded pull apart, or
Mm-hmm.
possibly a face pull, or even like some rear delt flies. And then I'm also
Yeah.
doing something with like external rotation to try to
Mm-hmm.
promote that stable scap. So that position is keeping your upper back tight during a bench, squeezing the bar whenever you're doing like a squat, and then creating a good finish point like on a deadlift to make sure you're not rounding forward.
Mm-hmm. I know I like incorporating face pulls quite a bit, uh, and just different variations in rows as well, like horizontal to vertical, and just a lot of emphasis on scapular positioning throughout each one.
Yeah.
Um, I think sometimes people will like, not to say that they don't like you don't know. So like most people will try to compensate if they don't know how to retract the scaps, and they'll just overextend either in the lumbar or the thoracic area.
That
Um,
is just a dead shrug.
yeah, bingo. Dead shrug as well.
Yeah,
Um,
that's probably my biggest pet peeve there, is whenever
mhm.
somebody just comes straight into a shrug.
But kind of taking some of the exercises that we've kind of listed here. Um, I'll man, it kind of depends on the person, but more often than not, I'm usually hitting probably 3 to 5 sets of like either 5 to 8 or maybe even like as high as like 15 to 20 reps. Just depends on the person and the region.
Sure.
If I need them to get really strong upper back, I'm probably going to be doing 3 to 5 sets of five good mornings, just so they can kind of learn how to build that volume up in the upper back. Um, but I primarily like to use a safety squat bar instead of like, because just most people don't have great shoulder mobility to start off with. So going from a regular barbell across the back, I would much rather use a safety squat bar if they got it.
Yeah, and I think your rep ranges are dependent on the modality you're using. So if it's
Mm-hmm.
like barbell and plate weight, um, yeah, I don't typically go too much higher than maybe sets of 10.
Mm-hmm.
If it's bands or band tension, uh, yeah, you might spend 15, 20, maybe even 30.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole goal here is like, one, you have your strength component so that you're creating a large stimulus for your nervous system. Then the higher rep stuff is to create mind muscle connection, then also develop hypertrophy to get it
Mm-hmm.
bigger.
Yeah. So what
You
is
have
your
like
goal?
good examples of like what this would look like for somebody like in public.
Mm-hmm.
So these are like really key contributors to like posture too. So whenever
Yeah.
you see like the person who's walking with very upright chest, their shoulders are back, they tend to present with a wider back and stuff like that. Like this is kind of like that region that allows you to quote unquote open up your posture.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
like this leads to awesome awesome like mechanical advantages with pressing and squatting and deadlifting and overhead motions too.
Hmm. Like it's funny. I've had a few patients who, like, have you ever had like that like knot in the upper back that like won't go away when you're moving your shoulder blades?
Yep.
I've had a few patients like that where we just start doing, banded upper back extensions. Next thing you know, that spot just gradually disappears.
And let's call it what it is. It means you're weak. Doesn't mean you have a
Yeah.
knot.
Yeah. You just needed upper back strength. Strength is a solution for a lot of different problems. Um,
Yeah, and what that is at the base is like your CNS is trying to correct this. So if you feel tight in a region, your CNS is trying to clamp down to gain more stability because you don't have it. That's the
yep.
easiest way to look at like quote unquote tightness, period.
Stability by facilitation.
Yep. And like you can extrapolate that forward, post op shoulder comes out very tight because it had trauma and it just
Hmm.
reorganized your CNS. So it's trying to gain as much stability as possible. And as you get stronger, it just goes away.
Hmm. Trying to think of a few other different variations I might use in the gym. Sometimes I like putting people on the GHD, and instead of having them all the way out at like your lower back, or like right in front of like your belly, I'll actually slide them back a little bit so that it's almost hitting them right in the very bottom of their rib cage, and then make them kind of fold over and then come right back up and out, just to get the thoracic extension. If you want to get a good idea of what your endurance is like in your upper back, try to get at least 20 reps and see what happens. Uh, I've had a few patients who think they've got a strong upper back and they can barely get through like maybe like 7 to 10 because they're just on fire.
Yeah. And guys, like the cueing on this is really what matters the most too.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's very abstract for somebody who's relatively new to it. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
because it is a very specific region. And I don't know, a lot of conventional wisdom says to like go away from things that blow up your back for some reason rather than treating it like another muscle group.
Yeah,
So learning that it's actually okay to go through this stuff and like feel sore is not injury is kind of a foreign concept for people. And
just
that
very
might,
odd.
yeah, it might be like more specific to the low back, but usually anything with the spinal erectors, people get a little bit fishy about it for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
But
It's
when
just
push
very
comes to
goofy to me.
shove, yeah, you just want to build it up so that way you don't have an energy leak in what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, being able to take someone who's had back pain for multiple years and all you do is start incorporating spinal erector strengthening and you just see the change in how they move is insane because they stop defaulting into positions that are just one inefficient, but two,
Yep.
um, it takes away their pain to a degree. Maybe not immediately, but like it's that gradual progression that I think people need to understand about these muscles because they are stabilizers, and so they're supposed to be fatigue resistant. Now, I say they're supposed to. Now, not everyone's are. Especially those people who have started to develop pain. They've either overused and defaulted to one particular position, like overarching into lumbar extension as opposed to maintaining thoracic extension. Um, that probably is the one movement that eludes majority of weightlifters is sustaining and maintaining thoracic extension. How many times do you see coaches cue chest up, and where do they get the movement from? The
Usually
lumbar
some,
region.
yeah, TL junction or lower.
Exactly. And so like I think sometimes as a coach, people need to do their due diligence and you can sit there and cue, until you turn blue in the face. But if you're not actually teaching them where to move, that in itself is going to be way more beneficial.
Yep.
Because I mean,
Um,
we could do all of these accessory movements, but if they don't know how to even, I guess, become mindful of that section of their body, um, you're just beating a dead horse.
yeah, yeah, you are. I just had like a little thought too. Like, if you're the person that constantly uses mixed grip in your deadlift rather than doing like a double overhand,
Hmm.
this is also kind of something that's abstract that'll just like increase your upper back and lat tension just by going through that change of doing a ton of like double overhand grip. um, pulls as well.
Yeah, different feeling and lat engagement, and how your shoulder blades have to kind of coordinate and
Yeah,
move to
they
that new
literally
grip.
have to retract. So there's probably even an argument to be made for doing a lot of stuff with like a double overhand, almost clean grip before
Mm-hmm.
you get to like your 80 and 90% of pulls.
Yeah, that's what I like doing with like my rack pulls. If I ever have rack pulls programmed, I usually will try to get as heavy as I possibly can with a double overhand before I have to go mixed grip. Or I'll get out straps if I want to maintain my double overhand.
Yep.
So it just kind of depends. But there's so many different ways to program upper back training. I mean, you don't even have to designate an entire day to this. You could actually incorporate this with your lower or upper body days, depending on how you have it broken down.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm usually thinking like lower body days are more of your spinal erectors, and then your upper body days are a lot more of your scap stabilizers, as far as like where your accessory work should come from.
I can see that.
Just kind of fits naturally because you can't like get a lot of this stuff without like hitting hamstrings and low back and stuff as well. So,
True.
naturally it just kind of fits in those categories.
Yeah.
Unless like you're just super weak and you want to get volume, in which case just, delegate 3 days a week and figure out how you want to fit it in.
I would say if you're going to specifically target the spinal erectors, I would recommend putting them more towards the end of your workout. Um, that way you don't like overly fatigue, unless you want that fatigue state. Um, but I would not like to fatigue my spinal erectors before I'm about to do, like, let's say RDLs or good mornings. Because I mean, I'm going to hit my big movements there, and then I'll move into those if I want to build up a little bit more. Like if I'm like we did that other day. Um, we
Yep.
did the hamstrings, the spinal erectors, and then we did the side bends. So I mean, save that stuff towards the end. Don't burn out your spinal erectors, and then go try to lift heavy.
Yeah. And like you're alluding to, in an ideal setup, you're hitting your strength piece first because you're fresh and you're not going to compromise position. And then you're trying to hit more like hypertrophy, uh, stabilizers, whatever you would want to call it, accessory uh, muscle groups afterwards. I will say there's obviously caveats to that. Like if you have trouble feeling them and you're trying to cue a position, maybe you go blow somebody up with some like banded sweat shrugs ahead of time so that way they can feel where that's at. But
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to like use a ton of band tension.
True.
Like you could just kind of do it as like a warm up and a finisher. I mean, like people even have alluded to doing this is for the low back, but they've done hypers before and after a session just to try to get that volume back up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. I guess like some other pieces to touch on too might just be like pull ups because of like how large that thoracolumbar fascia is,
Mm-hmm.
depending on like your goals.
Say
But like,
pull ups, inverted rows.
yeah, or anything that's going to have some bias on the lat, maybe
Mm-hmm.
of some benefit here too. But yeah, that's just going to help you keep the bar closer and feel more stacked, like when you're pressing.
Yeah, the better the spinal erectors and the lat can work together, the less compensation. Um, I guess another point to bring up then, Dave, would be grip strength for upper back stability. Um,
Sure, the two correlate very closely.
yeah, I mean,
You
you
know,
were even talking about it the other week, or maybe that was last. I don't know, it might have been early this week, but I know you had sent me a video of you doing a banded deadlift, and I think I asked about your head position or something like that. And then I watched the video again, and you had already texted me, but you said the bar had slipped out of your hands, and I watched it again, and it had. Um, but
yeah.
let's dive into that a little bit.
Well, uh, first off, nobody has huge grip strength without having a big, strong back. So the Popeye thing where he has huge forearms and he has like no upper back is that's not a thing. So your strength works from usually central to peripheral. So if you have a
Hmm.
strong upper back, then you're likely going to have much stronger grip strength, just as like a generality. Like do wrist
Hmm.
curls until you're blue in the face, but if you can't do a pull up, doesn't matter.
Let's say that's why I like, you know, sometimes the farmer carries come into play.
Yeah, I've actually used
Those
that a
are
ton
fantastic.
for your upper back position too.
I had the pleasure of doing wheelbarrow carries, which were, oh my God, that was not fun. Wanted to
Yeah,
vomit.
yeah. In the past, we've done like some like accessory days on Tuesdays, like where you'll just do like a 400-meter farmer carry, and you'll
Ugh,
just switch like variations of like how you do that, and it's kind of funny to see how people break that up.
that's 400 meters sounds horrible. Farmer carry,
Yeah,
not
and
gonna
there's
lie.
like some penalty for like setting it down. Like I not one of my favorite workouts.
Hmm. Um, have you seen the Australian gentleman? Hold on, let me pull him up because I was going to say another variation for like basically targeting the upper back, Zerker squats. Um, Hold on,
Sure.
I'll pull him
Or
up.
carries or
Yeah, Zerker carries, walks. Um, there's a
no.
gentleman who he's just disgustingly strong. Um, oh yeah, Tom Haviland. Have you seen him?
Yeah.
That man is absolutely insane.
He's like the
Uh,
guy who never shows his face.
yeah, I mean, he just did a 749-pound Zerker squat, and like he always posts these ruck videos of him like going out, and he'll carry a log, and he always switches up grip either in front, over the shoulder. Um, and he just his some of his grip strength stuff just looks absolutely insane too, um, with
Yeah,
what he carries.
he's a freak.
It's insane. Yeah, like farmers walk with 410 pounds each hand.
Yeah, and he has some really cool stuff about like GPP and just general recovery and some other stuff like that too.
Yeah, he does. He's got some good stuff. But
He's
you
a
want to talk
great
about upper
example.
back,
Yeah,
man?
this would be that
Dude,
archetype that I was talking about earlier, with like the straight up just V taper, almost looks like a square, and he's very upright and just looks like he could manhandle you.
he could probably pick me up with one arm. Like, it's just nuts how strong this man is.
Yeah, guys, you even go to like the bigger positions in like the NFL. I don't know, pick somebody who has a high level of function and pressing strength. These things are just like inherently there.
Like just,
Oh, that's like the first time I've seen his face.
I know, neither have I. But
That's
my
interesting.
God, that man is huge. All right, enough going crazy over that. But man, holy cow! But yeah, upper back strength. So if you had to program, let's say like two or three movements every single week, what would you say would be like your top three to like get people into the door? Or like maybe your top three most efficient, most effective?
Specifically for that region.
Hmm.
So primary stuff, like I like things that are either going to pull you forward or make you maintain it. So like front squat and like a rack pull or a sorry, good morning are probably like primaries.
Hmm.
Secondaries off of that are some version of like a banded sweat shrug or good morning with like a specific postural reversal.
Hmm.
And then I'm probably going to have you do like a pull apart laying down on a bench where you're maintaining scapular retraction the entire time. Then you're going to do like sets of 15 to 20.
Hmm.
That's kind of just
Yeah.
like a general component. And if you want to add something for like stability or postural support, maybe like a farmer carry.
Hmm. I know. I like this. Those are all good movements. I like the good mornings, the front squats especially, big movements, um, RDLs, and then also like if you don't have a barbell, you can also use like a sandbag if you have a sandbag. Um, Sometimes those front carries with sandbags, or even just doing good mornings while holding a sandbag. Um, those can get fun real quick.
Yep.
Anything else you want to touch on for upper body training, Dave?
I think we're good. I think we had a pretty broad and diverse assortment of stuff there.
Mm-hmm. If I could make one recommendation, I would say, it's one thing to have these tools, but like get someone to have eyes on you to make sure you're moving in the right spot. Okay. Especially your coach. Get your coach on you and see if, like, are you actually moving in the upper back? Or are you compensating either with your neck or with your lower back? Because those two are going to be much easier to find and move. And the other one, right in the dead center, that rib cage is prone to stiffness. So, I mean, learn to move it.
Yep. And be sure you feel it there.
Bingo. Bingo. But we hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. We will see you guys next time.